8:39 at WIBX. Delighted to have in studio for the rest of this hour a pair of local representatives, of course, State Senator Joseph Griffo and New York Assemblyman Anthony Brindisi. Of course, it's New York. Well, you're not the Pennsylvania, Delaware, or Florida Assembly representatives. Anyway, thanks for coming in to join us. We appreciate it. The budget now is done.
Great to be with you on opening day.
Yeah, right.
It looks like an opening day.
It's a school closing and delay, actually, is what it is. You guys caught up on some sleep over the weekend, I trust. It was a process that was kept you up late, I guess.
Yeah, very late. It was very extensive, a couple of days' worth. We were in session, I think, over 17 hours. I know the Assembly was there over a great amount of time, too, over those 2 days. That's probably one of the problems with the budget process from my perspective. I don't know that we need to really put ourselves in that position. We know what the deadline is, and I'm pleased that we were able to meet the deadline. But the two things about the budget that bother me is this, right at the end, the extensive amount of time that's put in at the 11th hour. Which keeps you around the clock, and it's not good for anybody. You're not functioning at your best for public transparency, all of those reasons. And then beyond that, we always have to deal with these lumped budget bills, which I know is another frustration for many of us because everything is stuck into one big bill, and I think we should be able to do better. But they've been doing that for many years, despite our best efforts to continue to call attention to that and try to say we need to make some reforms and changes in that regard.
Assemblyman Brindisi, there's some criticism, right, that to what Senator Griffo touched on, that this was done. It's always the three men in a room. That's always the criticism against it. What do you think about the process, particularly this year?
Yeah, I think the three men in a room has changed a little bit in terms of we have different leaders now who are representing our respective conferences. And I could tell you that every issue, although the speaker is the man representing the Assembly in the room, he is taking everything back to the Assembly, so much more than the previous speaker did. I can tell you from that time till now, Carl is much more engaged with the membership, and it's more of a member-driven agenda as opposed to a top-down approach, which is what Shelley used to do. Carl's soliciting input from us on every topic that's happening, and we're having extensive debate within our conference as to what our one-house position should be on particular issues. And then his job is to go forward and communicate that to the governor and to the leader of the Senate. So it's definitely more member-driven. It's still, I guess, technically three men in a room, but it's certainly with a lot more engagement from the membership.
Several things on the list here I wanted to touch on. I'll begin with the one that's drawing the most controversy statewide. That's $15 an hour. Where did you guys fall on $15 an hour? Do you think it's a good thing for upstate and the area that you represent?
Well, there were a lot of concerns and reservations, and like the Assemblyman said, our leader also followed a similar path. Senator Flanagan did try to continue to come back to the conference and get our input in order to continue those negotiations with the executive and the Assembly. On the $15, that goes to the point I made before. That was put into the education and labor bill. So that was lumped into a bill that was discussing a lot of other areas, aid to education. The reservations we had were, there was really not, we need to look at this factually, not only emotionally and philosophically. And we had asked for a long time for some type of economic analysis to be done to determine the true impact. So what we were successful in doing is seeing a 5.5-year implementation, and it will only go to $12.50 in upstate. Now, you'll have different rates in different parts of the state of New York. New York City will be at 15 and 3.5 years, Long Island in 6.5 years. Upstate will, in 5.5 years, get to $12.50, and then there will be an assessment and analysis done determining economic factors, and then should the economy be good, you'll see an index based on the CPI, the Consumer Price Index, things of that nature to move it forward from that point on. There's also a pause button put in place, so anytime that there's a downturn in the economy, the Division of Budget and the governor can make a determination that it's not feasible or practical from an economic perspective to move forward. The wage board, which the governor had threatened to use if we did not find a compromise in this budget process, he would have imposed the $15, and he's done that in the fast food industry. So that brings them back, I believe, too, now into this equation. So that helps them, so they're not out there on their own in the fast food industry. The wage board will be suspended for 6 years, and so I think that's where the compromise was, and we tried to mitigate. But again, the important thing is we're not adverse to a a living wage for people, but let's do it from an economic analysis perspective when we know that we're doing things that are good for the economy, not just on political philosophy or emotional arguments.
Yeah, and the incremental increase, in my opinion, is a great way to go. You mentioned that lumped in with this was it was part of the school funding package. A huge win for Upstate. Another $8 million for the Utica area, almost $3 million for Rome. Of course, you were on the school board before. That is huge for this area.
Yeah, this was a record year in terms of education increases. Probably the big thing that stuck out in this year's education budget was the elimination of the gap, the GEA, the gap elimination adjustment, which is something that has really hurt school districts in our area for a long time, school districts around the state for a long time. So we were able finally to repay that debt to the schools so they could have a nice, healthy increase in their aid. And then also a big bump in the foundation aid. The foundation aid is that aid that's used for those poor urban and rural school districts, so the places like Utica and Rome that are struggling more with poverty, that's the foundation aid that helps them, and we saw a nice big increase in the foundation aid. The good news going forward is that GEA is gone from now on, so next year we can continue to focus on that foundation aid so those poorer urban and rural school districts that are really suffering with the large class sizes and layoffs and cutbacks on programs can really move forward with some certainty as to what their funding is going to be. But we have to continue to look at the whole funding formula, and I continue to advocate for that because there's still, even within the foundation aid, there's still inequities that aren't compensated for, and other districts that really are not as poor as places like Utica are getting more funding. So we have to continue to go forward and make sure we're making tweaks to that foundation formula so we can make sure that the aid that the state does put into the budget for education is going to those schools that need it the most.
So GAP is gone forever.
GAP is gone forever.
Okay,
GAP is gone forever.
That is great news.
That's great news.
And I agree with the Assembly, and we actually carry a bill because we've recognized the importance of trying to change the foundation aid to look and focus on some of the high needs, low wealth districts like we see in our community. Another aspect to that is higher education too. We were successful in driving $1 billion into the tuition assistance program to make it more affordable for students going to college, and also a freeze in SUNY tuition and CUNY tuition next year.
Can I ask about before we get to the hospital funding and Nano, the reduction of taxes going forward? It's over, it was confusing to me as I tried to read about it because it's over 10 years and it takes the tax rate. I think if you make between $40,000 and $300,000, it drops the percentage you pay from roughly 6.5% to 5.5%, but that's over a decade. Is that right?
Well, this was a proposal we had advanced called 25 by 25 to try to reduce the personal income tax rate by 25% over the next 10 years. We had to find a compromise, obviously, with the governor on this. So you're going to see the beginnings of this over $1 billion. It'll go up to $4.4 billion, and you'll see those percentage drops. Now, as you indicated, so we'll be able to give more information. But this is for everybody. It's not only for a married couple; it's for a single head of household, and it is a substantial and significant tax relief because we're recognizing the burden on the personal income tax, trying to lower that rate significantly over time.
So we've got more money for schools, especially upstate, an increase in the minimum wage, a tax break here, and then we'll move now to the hospital funding. The $300 million was included in this budget that was passed. It was in it last year. It came out. I know you guys went and fought for it. The $300 is in the budget that was passed for a new hospital here in the Utica area. It
is in the budget. That was probably the most difficult part of our job this year, was trying to restore that money. It was a difficult part of our job last year, trying to keep that money in the budget. It was put into the executive budget last year. Senator Griffo and I fought very hard to make sure it stayed in the budget because obviously there are legislators from around the state who had fought for that money to come to their areas, and we had to work together to make sure it stayed in this region. Fast forward to this January, the governor had cut it out of his budget, which was a shock to both of us because it's a year later and we had planned for that. The hospital had planned for that funding. So we had to go again and do an Act 2, which I never want to do again, to try and keep that money, bring that money back into the budget. And I have to say, as soon as I found out it was cut, I talked immediately to the Speaker. I know the Senator did the same with the leader in the Senate. And between the two of us, we were able to really fight for that funding to make sure it ended up in the final budget. And now we do have that $300 million that's back for a new healthcare facility in the region.
This was difficult and challenging. I want to compliment the Assemblyman because this took a lot of hard work, and this was a great team effort. First of all, what the governor did is somewhat unprecedented, to give it and then take it.
Right.
But I think what we did as legislators last year to deliver and this year to restore that and to deliver it again is extremely significant. $300 million to put into this hospital project, and to have to do this a second time, I think shows that we've really worked well together and really did something that is for the benefit of our community. It's just so difficult to explain. It was so challenging in order to accomplish this, and I'm proud of what we were able to accomplish because it's for the good of our community. And on top of that, the money that we drove into Nano to champion that and to advocate and then to deliver that over $585 million, I think we had some big wins here locally as a result of the two of us working very hard together to get this done in this budget.
Absolutely. We're talking with State Senator Joe Griffo, New York Assemblyman Anthony Brindisi, and of course we're talking about the hospital funding there. The projection is it's going to cost $500 to $600. So this would fund about half of this overall project for the hospitals. I want to step aside just for a moment. If you have a question, give us a call, 736-0186. When we come back, we'll talk about Nano and maybe some timelines and what was in this budget as it relates to Nano in our area, Utica Nano. Stay tuned for that here on WIBX.